He thought his family was perfect until one shocking secret ripped everything apart. Would you have stayed silent or revealed the truth no matter the cost? I always believed my family was the definition of stability. My parents had been married for over 30 years, and my younger sister, Claire, and I grew up in what I thought was an ordinary, loving household. We fought like siblings do, but deep down I always felt protective of her, like it was my unspoken duty as her older brother. That image of perfection shattered the day I stumbled across an old box buried in the attic. It was one of those dusty cardboard things stuffed with yellowed envelopes, brittle photographs, and papers that looked like they hadn't seen daylight in decades. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just cleaning up while my parents were away, but what I found inside felt like stepping into someone else's life. There, tucked between hospital bills and old letters, was Claire's birth certificate. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until I noticed the father's name. It wasn't my dad's. It was a completely different man's name, one I'd never heard before in my life. My chest tightened, and for a long moment I just stood frozen in the dim attic, staring at that piece of paper. I read it over and over again, as if my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no matter how many times I checked, the truth was the same. The man I had called Dad for 28 years wasn't listed as Claire's father. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. Had my whole life been a lie? Why had nobody told me? And most importantly, did Claire know? I carried that single sheet of paper downstairs like it was a live grenade in my hands. My heart hammered against my ribs, and my palms were slick with sweat. Every creak of the floorboards felt deafening, as if the house itself knew I had just uncovered something I wasn't meant to find. I spread the birth certificate on the kitchen table and stared at it under the harsh overhead light. The black ink of the other man's name burned into my eyes, and no matter how many times I blinked, I couldn't shake the image. Questions exploded in my head faster than I could process them. Had my mother cheated? Was Claire the product of some affair? Or maybe there was some perfectly reasonable explanation, like a clerical error or a name change. But even as I tried to rationalize it, deep down I knew there had to be more to the story. The cold shiver ran down my spine as I thought back to the years growing up. Claire had always looked a little different than me. Where I had Dad's dark hair and sharp features, Claire's lighter hair and softer face never quite matched. People had joked about it occasionally, saying she looked like the milkman's kid. We always laughed it off. Now, those harmless comments felt like pieces of a puzzle I had never thought to put together. I sat there for what felt like hours, my mind spinning. Every memory, family dinners, holidays, Claire's birthdays, suddenly felt tainted, like they'd all been built on a secret foundation. I couldn't stop asking myself, if my parents lied about this, what else had they hidden? And how could I ever look at them the same way again? The worst part was the gnawing uncertainty. Did Claire know she had a different father? Or was she living in blissful ignorance, completely unaware of the truth that had just landed like a bomb in my lap? And then came the darkest thought of all. If she didn't know, was it my place to tell her? The next morning, I woke up with that certificate still on my mind. I hadn't slept well. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, the man who raised me, and then the unfamiliar name written on that paper. The contrast between the two haunted me. I went about my usual routine, but nothing felt normal. Pouring cereal into a bowl, hearing the coffee machine gurgle. These small sounds seemed distant, almost muted, like I was walking through someone else's life. When Claire came downstairs, humming softly as she tied her hair back, I felt my stomach twist. She looked so carefree, so ordinary, like the world hadn't just tilted off its axis overnight. That I studied her face more closely than I ever had before. The slope of her nose, the shape of her chin, the way her smile curved. They were details I had overlooked for years, but now scrutinized through a different lens. I couldn't stop comparing her features to Dad's, and the more I looked, the less resemblance I found. When she grabbed her bag and left for class, I sat frozen at the kitchen table, wondering, did she already know? Was she hiding it, just like Mom and Dad clearly had? Or was I the only one walking around with this unbearable truth, carrying it like a weight no one else could see? The day dragged on. Every tick of the clock seemed louder, mocking me with the passing time. I wanted to confront Mom or Dad right then, demand answers, force the truth into the open. But at the same time, fear rooted me to my chair. What if it was worse than I imagined? What if my family wasn't the family I thought it was at all? That evening, when Dad came home from work, his tired smile nearly broke me. He ruffled my hair the same way he always did, asked me about my day, and sat down with the paper like nothing was wrong. I had to bite my tongue to stop the words from spilling out. He had no idea that a storm was building in my chest, one that could destroy everything he thought he had. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat in my room with the birth certificate spread out on my desk like it was evidence from a crime scene. My lamp cast a yellow glow across the page, and I kept tracing my fingers over the father's name written there, a name that wasn't the man downstairs watching TV. Laughing at some late-night show that I thought back to all the little moments with Mom. The way her eyes sometimes darted away when Dad praised Claire. The quiet tension that filled the air when family photos came up. Or when people commented on how Claire looked different. At the time, I brushed it off as coincidence. Now, every memory felt like a puzzle piece snapping into place that I decided to test something. I walked into the living room where Mom was folding laundry. Dad had already gone to bed, leaving her alone. I casually asked her about Claire's baby photos, trying to sound curious rather than accusatory. Her hands froze mid-fold. It was so quick, anyone else might have missed it, but I saw it. Her knuckles whitened around the shirt. Her eyes flickered for just a second. She recovered fast, too fast, and launched into a rehearsed-sounding answer about how Claire was such a quiet baby compared to me. How she looked just like her aunt back then. But her voice carried that edge, that tremor that told me I wasn't imagining things. When I went back to my room, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Mom knew something. She had been hiding it for years. And now I wasn't just holding a piece of paper. I was holding the key to a secret that had shaped my entire family without me ever knowing that I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, torn between fury and fear. Fury that they had lied to me for so long. Fear of what the truth would mean once it was out in the open. Because one thing was certain. The truth wasn't going to stay buried forever. The following days were a blur of suspicion and second-guessing. Suddenly, my own house felt unfamiliar. Like every corner was hiding a truth I had been too blind to see. I would watch Mom and Dad at breakfast, their usual banter over coffee and toast, and all I could think was, how much of this is real, and how much is just a performance held together by silence? Claire laughed across the table one morning, showing Dad something on her phone, and for a split second I noticed it. The way Mom's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was like watching a mask slip, only for her to pull it back into place immediately. I realized then that I hadn't just stumbled upon a lie. I had been living inside one my whole life. That night, the house seemed louder than usual. The creaks of the old wood, the hum of the fridge, the faint murmur of the TV downstairs, everything pressed down on me, making it impossible to sleep. I kept imagining what Dad would feel if he knew the truth. Would it destroy him? Or worse, had he known all along and chosen to live with the lie? That thought chilled me even more. I caught myself studying Claire too, noticing details I'd never paid attention to before. The way her features didn't quite match Dad's side of the family. The slight differences that suddenly seemed glaring in the light of what I knew. And every time she looked at me with her usual, carefree smile, I felt like I was betraying her by keeping this secret bottled up inside. The weight of it all was unbearable. I knew I couldn't keep quiet forever. But every possible outcome seemed catastrophic. If I told Dad, it could shatter the family. If I confronted Mom, she might deny it, twist it, make me question myself again. And if I told Claire, I didn't even want to think about what that would do to her world. I was caught in a web of lies that wasn't even mine, yet it felt like I was the one destined to rip it apart. And deep down, a terrifying thought kept clawing its way to the surface. Maybe the family I thought I had never truly existed at all. The decision came one restless night when sleep refused to find me. I lay staring at the ceiling, the shadows stretching across my room like they were mocking me, whispering secrets I couldn't unhear. My chest felt tight, like if I didn't act soon, I would suffocate under the weight of everything I now carried. That I decided I would start with Mom. She was the source, the keeper of this truth. And if anyone could either confirm or crush my suspicions, it was her. But I couldn't just barge in and demand answers. I knew her too well. She was clever, composed, and capable of spinning words into illusions. If I wanted the truth, I had to be careful, subtle, and deliberate. So I began watching her. Not in the obvious way, but like a detective gathering evidence. I noted when she smiled too quickly, when her hands trembled faintly as she washed the dishes, when she lingered on old photographs with a strange expression that wasn't quite nostalgia. These tiny cracks in her mask gave me more certainty than I wanted. The tension grew unbearable. Meals became silent battlegrounds in my head, with every glance and every half-said word taking on new meaning. Dad remained oblivious, humming along to the radio as he buttered his toast. Claire remained blissfully unaware, chattering about school and friends. And I sat there, drowning in the secret, feeling like a traitor to both of them. The breaking point came when I found Mom alone in the living room, staring at a family photo, the four of us smiling, perfectly frozen in time. The way her fingers traced Claire's face in the picture made my heart lurch. She didn't even notice me standing in the doorway at first. When she did, she jumped slightly, as if caught doing something forbidden. I almost asked her right then. The words were on the tip of my tongue. Is Claire even Dad's daughter? But my courage faltered at the last second, swallowed by the fear of detonating something I couldn't control once unleashed. Instead, I forced a smile, muttered a lame excuse about getting water, and fled upstairs like a coward. But as I sat in my room, trembling, one thought hit me like a hammer. Silence was no longer an option. If I didn't confront her soon, this secret would consume me alive. That I finally reached the point where hesitation was no longer an option. My chest felt like it was carrying a boulder, and every day I delayed was another day of torment. So one evening, when the house was unusually quiet, Dad working late, Claire asleep, I knew this was my chance. That I found Mom in the kitchen, the soft hum of the fridge filling the silence. She was sipping tea, her face half lit by the overhead light. For a moment, I stood there, frozen, my pulse racing like I was about to leap off a cliff. Then the words tumbled out. Not graceful, not calm, just raw and heavy. Mom, is Claire really Dad's daughter? The cup in her hand clattered against the counter, spilling tea onto the floor. She didn't move to clean it up. Her eyes widened, and for the first time in my life, I saw her mask shatter completely. Panic, fear, shame, it all flashed across her face in an instant. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a world I didn't recognize anymore. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give out. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling like it hadn't since I was a child. Where did you hear that? I told her about the late-night whispers, the accidental overhearing, the pieces that didn't fit. I laid it all out, my voice shaking but firm. There was no going back now. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. And in that moment, even without her saying the words, I already knew the truth. My suspicions weren't just shadows of imagination. They were real, and they had just broken something sacred between us. But I needed her to say it, to confirm it, to either damn me for asking or damn herself for hiding. I waited, every second stretching into eternity. Her silence was louder than any scream could have been. I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white, waiting for words that didn't want to leave her mouth. When she finally raised her head, her eyes were bloodshot, glistening with tears she hadn't let fall yet. You weren't supposed to know, she whispered, her voice thin and fragile, as if each syllable was cutting her throat on the way out. Those words alone sent a chill down my spine. They weren't a denial, they weren't a protest, they were confirmation. My heart sank, and I felt the air around me shift. Like the house itself knew the weight of what she had just admitted. She took a deep breath, trembling, and started speaking in bursts, as though she had to fight with herself for every confession. She told me about a time years ago when she and Dad had been at their lowest. Constant arguments, distance, resentment simmering beneath every interaction. She felt unloved, abandoned emotionally, and in that void, she turned to someone else. A man who made her feel seen, valued, if only for fleeting moments. She swore it hadn't been some long affair, but one mistake, a night that should never have happened. Yet from that single night came Claire. The words spilled out of her like poison she'd been carrying for years. She admitted that Dad never questioned it because he was so eager to believe Claire was his miracle baby after years of straying. And she let him believe it. She buried the truth so deep she thought it might never see the light of day. I felt my entire body go cold. Claire, my little sister, the girl I had protected, played with, confided in. was suddenly a question mark, a reminder of betrayal. And worse, I saw my father in my mind, his kind eyes, his endless sacrifices, his pride in raising his family. He had no idea. The kitchen felt suffocating, like the walls were closing in. My mother sat before me, trembling, broken, begging me silently with her eyes not to hate her. But how could I not? Because in that moment, I realized the truth wasn't just hers to carry anymore. Now it was mine too. The weight of her confession pressed down on me like a boulder. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. Every memory of my childhood came flooding back, now tainted with suspicion. Family dinners, birthday parties. Even the way Dad would proudly tell people Claire had his smile. All of it twisted into something unbearably painful that I stumbled into the living room and sat down heavily on the couch. My hands shook as I buried my face in them, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. My mother hovered in the doorway, her body trembling, her voice fragile as she tried to say my name. I couldn't even look at her. The storm inside me was impossible to contain. On one hand, I wanted to scream, to tell her she had destroyed everything I believed in. On the other, I couldn't stop thinking about Dad, the man who had built our lives from the ground up, who worked long hours and sacrificed endlessly for us. If he knew the truth, it would break him. And then there was Claire, my little sister, the girl who once held my hand on her first day of school because she was too shy to walk alone. The teenager who still called me when she needed advice, even if it was about something small. Did she deserve to know the truth? Or would this knowledge shatter her entire identity? The silence in the house was suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. My mind was torn in two. Keep the secret and protect them all, or reveal it and risk destroying the family forever. The worst part was realizing there was no good choice. Either way, someone would be broken. Claire's innocent question felt like a bomb detonating in slow motion. She kept staring at the photo, then at Dad's face in the other pictures, then back at me. My silence must have given something away, because her smile faded and suspicion clouded her eyes that I tried to laugh it off, to brush it aside. But inside I was crumbling. Dad, meanwhile, leaned over curiously, asking who the man in the photo was. Mom froze, her hands trembling as she reached for the album, muttering something about an old family friend. But Dad wasn't convinced, and neither was Claire. The tension was suffocating. Every heartbeat screamed at me to end the charade. I could see the pieces falling into place in Claire's mind, and in Dad's too. Their eyes turned to me, searching for answers, and in that moment, I knew silence was no longer an option. The secret I had carried alone was about to come crashing out into the open, whether I liked it or not. The room fell into a silence so sharp it felt like it could cut skin. Mom sat stiffly, clutching the album against her chest like it could shield her from the truth spilling out. Dad's brow furrowed, his hand tightening around the arm of his chair, while Claire's eyes darted between all of us, waiting for someone, anyone, to explain. I felt my mouth go dry, but I forced the words out, each one heavy, trembling, but unstoppable. I told them the truth, that I wasn't Dad's biological son, that Mom had kept it hidden for years, that I'd only learned recently and had been struggling under the weight of it since Dad's face crumbled. The man I had always seen as unshakable suddenly looked broken, hollowed out by betrayal. Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth, tears pooling instantly as if her entire foundation had just collapsed. Mom tried to speak, her words stumbling over themselves, excuses, apologies, desperate justifications. But none of it mattered. The truth was out, and the damage had been done. That I didn't know what hurt more: Dad's silent devastation, Claire's trembling confusion, or the look in Mom's eyes as she realized her decades of lies had just burned to ash in a single moment. The family I thought I knew no longer existed, and I wasn't sure if what was left could ever be put back together. The aftermath was worse than the reveal itself. For days, the house was quiet, but not in a peaceful way. It was suffocating, heavy, filled with a silence that screamed louder than any argument. Dad barely spoke, moving like a ghost through the rooms. His eyes avoided Mom's, and whenever they accidentally met, it was like a knife twisting deeper. Claire, my sister, couldn't look at me the same. Not because she hated me, but because every time she did, she saw the cracks in the family she thought was perfect. I caught her crying alone in her room more than once, hugging an old teddy bear like she was 6 years old again. Mom tried. She made dinners. She left notes. She pleaded for forgiveness. But every attempt felt hollow, because the wound wasn't about chores or kind gestures. It was about decades of lies, about trust ripped out by the roots that AS for me. I felt like I had set fire to the only home I ever knew. But at the same time, there was relief. The secret was no longer eating me alive. I could finally breathe, even if the air was thick with smoke and ash from the explosion I caused. Weeks later, Dad moved into the guest room. Conversations turned into whispers. Family dinners became tense, filled with clinking forks and unsaid words. And I knew, deep down, that things would never return to how they were. But maybe they shouldn't. Maybe the truth, no matter how destructive, was the only way forward. That I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. My family would never be the same again. Looking back now, I don't regret exposing the truth. The pain that followed was inevitable, but it was a pain rooted in reality, not in lies. For years, my family lived inside an illusion, carefully painted over cracks that were always there. I was the one who tore the paint away, and everyone hated me for it, at least at first. But what I've realized is that lies rot you from the inside. They turn every smile into a performance, every family gathering into a stage play where everyone knows their lines, but no one believes the story. That was our life before I opened my mouth. Yes, I destroyed the family I once knew. But maybe it was already broken. I just ripped the bandage off so everyone could see the wound festering underneath. Dad has filed for separation. Mom pretends she's strong, but I see her crumble when she thinks no one's watching. Claire is still distant, and I don't know if she'll ever forgive me for being the messenger of destruction. And me? I live with the weight of being the one who lit the match. But I also live with the knowledge that I ended the cycle of lies. Maybe the truth broke us, but at least now, whatever rises from these ashes will be real. So, am I the villain who ruined my family, or the one who finally forced us to face reality? I guess that's for others to decide. But for me, I'd rather live with the scars of truth than the comfort of lies. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.